During World War II, the skies of Europe and the Pacific were dominated by an air force that would change the course of the war, not merely through firepower, but through precision, range, and mass production capability. American bombers, such as the B-29 Flying Fortress and the B-29 Superfortress, were not just machines of war. They were symbols of a strategy that combined technology, logistics, and an unprecedented industrial vision. But what exactly made these bombers so effective? After all, other countries also possessed heavy aircraft. Germany, for example, relied on fast fighters and tactical strikes. Japan bet on maneuverability and surprise. However, the United States chose a different path, one that required factories running 24 hours a day, pilots trained at record speed, and a strategic bombing doctrine that targeted not only military objectives, but the industrial backbone of the enemy. The effectiveness of American bombers did not come from a single decision. It was built piece by piece over years, from advanced engineering to in-flight refueling capability, through a global network of air bases and a supply chain that seemed impossible to maintain, yet functioned like clockwork. In this video, we will explore the less obvious factors that explain why American bombers not only flew farther, but also changed the course of the war. We will understand how the combination of strategy, industry, and technological innovation created an advantage that no other nation could match. Prepare yourself to discover how a continental nation transformed the sky into its battlefield, and why, even today, American bombers from World War II continue to be studied as examples of air superiority. If you enjoy understanding the behind-the-scenes of military history and the decisions that shaped the modern world, stay with us. What comes next will show why the skies belong to the United States and how this was achieved not by chance, but by design. To understand the success of American bombers in World War II, we must go back to the end of World War I. While most European powers viewed the airplane as a tool for tactical support, useful for reconnaissance and ground troop support, the United States began developing a different doctrine: strategic bombing. This idea gained momentum in the 1930s when officers like Billy Mitchell and later General Henry Hap Arnold argued that modern warfare would be won through control of the air. For them, destroying the enemy's industrial capacity was more effective than engaging armies on the battlefield. This vision shaped the entire structure of American aviation even before the conflict began. Meanwhile, the U.S. government invested heavily in industrial infrastructure. The creation of the Army Air Forces and the funding of projects like the B-29 Flying Fortress were not isolated decisions. They were part of a coordinated plan to ensure that when war arrived, the United States could produce thousands of aircraft in record time. And that is exactly what happened. In 1941, even before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States was already constructing factories specialized in heavy bombers. Boeing, Consolidated, and Martin became true industrial powerhouses, with assembly lines operating 24 hours a day. The result? More than 12,000 B-17s and nearly 4,000 B-24s produced during the war. But the effectiveness of bombers was not limited to quantity. Engineering also made a difference. The B-17, for example, was known for its durability. Many returned to base with extensive structural damage, yet still managed to land. This increased crew confidence and reduced human losses, a crucial factor in maintaining morale and mission continuity. Furthermore, American bombers were equipped with advanced technology for the time. The Norden bomb sight system, for example, allowed unprecedented precision in aerial attacks.
Although not perfect, it represented a technological leap compared to methods used by other nations. Another advantage was crew training. Each bomber required between 8 and 11 highly trained men, from the pilot to the radio operator and gunners. The United States established training centers throughout the country, standardizing procedures and ensuring that each mission was executed with discipline and coordination. But perhaps the greatest advantage was the ability to operate in depth. With a range of up to 3,000 kilometers, American bombers could strike targets in the heart of Germany and Japan, even departing from distant bases. This was only possible thanks to a global support logistics network, with air bases in the United Kingdom, Africa, the Pacific, and even China. This combination of strategic doctrine, mass production, advanced engineering, and global reach created an air force that no other country could match, and we are still only beginning to understand the impact of this.
In Europe, the effectiveness of American bombers was put to the test in one of the most ambitious aerial campaigns in history, the strategic bombing offensive against Nazi Germany. Starting in 1942, with the United States' entry into the war, missions by the 8th Air Force began striking industrial targets in German territory, weapons factories, oil refineries, railway centers, and power plants. Unlike the British Royal Air Force, which preferred nighttime attacks and area bombing, the Americans insisted on daytime precision missions. This decision came at a high cost initially. B-17 formations faced fierce resistance from the Luftwaffe and suffered significant losses. Missions such as those to Schweinfurt and Regensburg in 1943 resulted in hundreds of aircraft shot down. But the United States responded with adaptation. The introduction of long-range escort fighters, such as the P-51 Mustang, changed the game. Now bombers could rely on protection to the target and back. This drastically reduced losses and allowed missions to become more frequent and effective. The impact was devastating for Germany. By 1944, the production of aircraft and tanks began to decline, not due to lack of design or manpower, but because factories were being destroyed faster than they could be rebuilt. The morale of the civilian population was also shaken, with cities like Dresden, Hamburg, and Berlin suffering continuous attacks. In the Pacific, the scenario was different, and so were the bombers. There, the protagonist was the B-29 Superfortress, a much more advanced aircraft with intercontinental range and the ability to fly at altitudes exceeding 9,000 meters. This allowed it to escape most Japanese fighters and strike targets in the Japanese archipelago from bases in the Mariana Islands. The bombing campaign against Japan culminated in a radical change in tactics. Initially, attacks were conducted with conventional high-precision bombs, but Japanese resistance and weather conditions led American commanders to adopt a more aggressive approach, large-scale incendiary bombing. In March 1945, Tokyo was struck by one of the war's most destructive operations. More than 300 B-29s dropped incendiary bombs on the city, killing approximately 100,000 people in a single night. Other Japanese cities, such as Osaka, Nagoya, and Kobe, suffered similar attacks. The objective was clear: force surrender through the destruction of urban and industrial infrastructure. These campaigns paved the way for the use of atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, also delivered by B-29s. Although controversial, these actions demonstrated the United States' air projection power and ended the war in the Pacific without the need for a land invasion, which would have cost hundreds of thousands of lives. What united all these operations was the United States' ability to maintain a continuous aerial offensive across multiple theaters for years on end.
No other nation possessed the resources, logistics, and doctrine to sustain this type of global-scale aerial warfare.
By the end of World War II, American bombers had left a deep mark not only on the battlefield, but on the very way air power would be understood in the decades to come. They proved that control of the skies could shape the outcome of a war, not merely by supporting ground troops, but by directly attacking the enemy's ability to sustain the conflict. The legacy of this strategy was immediate. In 1947, the United States Air Force was officially separated from the Army, becoming an independent force. This reflected the recognition that air power had become a strategic pillar in its own right, with bombers at the center of this doctrine. During the Cold War, this lesson was taken to the extreme. The B-29 gave way to the B-36, then to the B-52, and later to the B-2 Spirit. All these aircraft inherited the same principle, the ability to strike any point on the planet with precision and devastating force. The doctrine of nuclear deterrence, based on strategic bombers, was a direct continuation of the logic developed in World War II. But there is also a human side to this legacy. The crews that flew missions over Germany and Japan faced extreme risks. Many did not return. Others carried physical and emotional scars for the rest of their lives. The success of American bombers was not merely a matter of technology or industry, it was also a story of courage, discipline, and sacrifice. Today, when we look back, it's easy to see the numbers. Thousands of aircraft produced, millions of tons of bombs dropped, entire cities transformed into ruins. But behind these numbers lay a clear strategy and a conviction that war could be won not merely by brute force, but by logistical, technological, and organizational superiority. Compared to other nations, the United States adopted an approach that required long-term vision. While Germany invested in revolutionary weapons like the V-2 rockets and Japan bet on kamikaze attacks, the United States relied on a war machine that could be maintained, supplied, and replicated on a global scale. That was the true American advantage. And that advantage did not disappear with the end of the war. It transformed into a model of power projection that continues to influence United States defense policy to this day. The concept of an expeditionary force, capable of operating anywhere in the world, was born with the bombers of World War II. In the end, the effectiveness of American bombers was not the result of a single factor. It was the sum of strategic choices, industrial investments, technological innovations, and above all, a deep belief that control of the air could decide the fate of nations. Today, more than 80 years later, this story still teaches us something essential. The true power lies not merely in the force of a weapon, but in the ability to think big, plan ahead, and execute with precision. And that leads us to an inevitable question. If the skies were decisive in the 20th century, what will be decisive in the 21st?